Welcome to Proclaiming Justice, a podcast from PJTN that focuses the light of truth on vital issues in today's headlines that impact every American. I'm your host, Laurie Cardoza-Moore, founder and president of Proclaiming Justice to the Nations, and I'm here to educate, motivate, and activate you to action. I want to arm you with the truth and the facts you'll need to fight and preserve our constitutional republic and uphold the Judeo-Christian values our nation was founded upon. Are we witnessing Nazi-style Gestapo tactics being waged against parents and taxpaying citizens? Are local school board members keeping a dossier on parents and citizens who exert their constitutional rights to hold local elected officials accountable for indoctrinating their children? Are parents and taxpaying citizens finally woke to the subversive agenda to destroy America and all of the values our nation was founded upon? On this week's podcast, I have invited a homeschooling mother to join us today to share a horrific incident that occurred in her home when the FBI raided her home and handcuffed her in front of her children. Welcome to Proclaiming Justice, a podcast from PJTN that shines the light of biblical truth on vital issues from today's headlines that impact every American, Jew and Christian, people of faith and people of conscience. I'm your host, Laurie Cardoza-Moore. If you missed the last episode of this podcast, you will find it and our previous podcast lineup on our website at pjtn.org. I also want to remind you to listen and share this and all of our previous podcasts with your family and friends so that they can become more informed about this and other related issues. Our goal at PJTN is to equip you to stand against the disinformation by taking back local control of your community and your children's and grandchildren's education. The first step to that process is education. We must become informed. Remember to visit our website daily to receive updates on all of PJTN's groundbreaking initiatives and programs, and sign up to receive PJTN's media and action alerts to share with family and friends. You can also follow us on all the social media platforms at PJTN. As a PJTN Watchman, your action could mean all the difference in the success of our global mission to combat the enemy that is trying to rob our children of their future. So please help me spread this vital information today. In the Bible, we are commanded to teach our children the Word of God as stated in Joel chapter 1, verse 3. Quote, "Tell your children about it, let your children tell their children, and their children another generation." That's 3 generations of children who are to be taught about God's covenant with Israel and their exodus from Egypt. Unfortunately, we have failed miserably, and we are witnessing the evidence of that in our classrooms today. So what can we do to take back local control of our community? What are some actions that must be taken to reverse the course we are currently on? We are witnessing parents and citizens nationwide who are mobilizing against the propaganda and history revisionism being peddled to our children. And now we are even witnessing anti-Semitism and Holocaust revisionism in their curriculum. Organizations and institutions that were once considered respected and trusted have bought into the anti-American, anti-Judeo-Christian narrative and can no longer be trusted. More and more teaching organizations like the National Education Association, as well as teachers' unions and the National School Board Association, have bought into this propaganda and are actively pushing this effort that will ultimately destroy our republic unless we engage. On a previous podcast, we discussed the National School Board Association's letter to the Biden administration requesting that they designate parents and citizens who attend school board meetings to hold their local school board members accountable as domestic terrorists. In response, Attorney General Merrick Garland essentially issued a declaration of war in a memo to weaponize the FBI, including the criminal division of U.S. attorneys in 14,000 school districts across the U.S., addressing threats against school administrators, board members, teachers, and staff, stating that in November, the department will announce a series of measures designed to address the rise of supposed criminal conduct directed towards school personnel. Who is the target of the investigation? Parents and grandparents, moms and dads. It's not Antifa, who murdered people in the streets, destroyed public and private property, nor is it the racist and anti-Semitic Black Lives Matter, who launched a modern-day pogrom in Los Angeles. No, it's law-abiding, tax-paying citizens. Are we now the target of our Attorney General? A couple of weeks ago, American citizens showed up en masse on Election Day to send a message to the Biden administration, the Attorney General, and their collaborators across the U.S. that parents and tax-paying citizens have drawn a line in the sand, refusing the Marxist takeover of our children's education and our communities. It was a nationwide referendum that reverberated from Virginia to Washington state and many points in between. Americans rejected the indoctrination of our children with racist, anti-Semitic, anti-Judeo-Christian critical race theory propaganda in our classrooms. And we sent a message to Biden and AG Garland that we will not be intimidated into silence. On this week's podcast, I've invited Sherronna Bishop with America's Mom to Proclaiming Justice. Sherronna, also known as America's Mom, is a constitutional conservative and American patriot who stepped into the freedom ring to protect her children from harmful government policies. She tenaciously defends core values of God-fearing patriots who do not want to lose the freedoms and rights of all citizens who live in the greatest nation in the world. She tirelessly researches issues of our culture and Constitution and has a passion to ensure that all people, starting with the individual, maintain the right to life, liberty, and personal property. As a wife and mother of 4, she is resolute in her defense of the relentless attack on our children and parental rights. In the midst of continuous assault on the Western way of life, she brings hope and inspiration to those who feel arrested by political correctness and false narratives of our time. She is a mother of 4, wife to 1, and slave to none. Please join me in welcoming Sherronna. Sherronna, thank you for joining us today on Proclaiming Justice.
Thank you so much for having me, and thank you for that introduction. Funny that part in there that says arrested by the effects of the government. Now that's really interesting. Now that I'm hearing it from you, thank you for having me on.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for taking the time to discuss this revolutionary moment in U.S. history with us, and we are honored. I've read several articles about you and what you went through, and I just want you to know we admire you. You are a mighty woman of God to stand up in the face of the enemy. And it's interesting because in Genesis chapter 3, verse 15, when it talks about the serpent and the woman, that God is going to put enmity between the serpent and the woman, between her seed and his seed. And when I read that, I thought to myself, no wonder we see so many women getting involved in this, because when we see what they are doing to our children, we know exactly what this is, and we are not backing down. And I just so admire you, your tenacity, and your willingness to stand firm in the face of the tremendous adversity that you've had to endure. So you have a powerful and alarming story. And I think this audience is going to want to sit and hear and share this message, because this is critically important. Mainstream media is not going to cover this, ladies and gentlemen. If you want to hear about this, you're going to have to listen to podcasts like our Proclaiming Justice. You're going to have to go to alternative media to find the story. But Sherrona's going to tell us from, on her own what actually happened. And I wanted to invite you on the program, Sherronna, today because we are seeing similar threats to parents and citizens that you personally experienced in your home. So let's tell our audience what happened to you on November 16th. You were homeschooling your children, you live in Colorado, and you find the FBI at your front door, and all of a sudden you're being raided by a SWAT team. They're busting down your door and they're putting you in handcuffs. Tell us what happened that day.
Yeah, there is a really important piece of this to understand, and that I think is really important. There are many people who have already faced challenges like this with the overreach of these three-letter alphabet agencies. The fact is that I have been able to develop a base of grassroots activists who have my back and know how transparent, how public I am. And so for that reason, we've been able to get this story out. And for those who have gone through this, who did not have media friends or did not have a base like we have, I hope that I can do justice on behalf of you as well in telling this story, because I don't think in my adult life that I've been as scared as I was that day. On Tuesday morning, I was homeschooling my children, like you said, cooking for the week, just doing our thing. And we heard banging at the door. We have neighbor kids, and sometimes they're a little bit obnoxious, so I thought for a minute it might be them. But as I approached the door, I realized that's not neighborhood kids. Those are big, large men in black at my front door, banging on my door, demanding to open the door. I don't remember everything that they said. I believe they said it was the FBI. And in that moment, my kids were in the kitchen at the kitchen table doing their school. And so I went to them, ushered them into their bedroom, just said, stay here. I don't know what's going to happen. Keeping in mind the climate, the national climate right now, where we have 56 people who are at the bottom of the White House in the prison there. They've never been charged. They are Americans. They should be protected under the Constitution, but they're being held there without even any charges ever being filed against them. And just such a lawless time that all those things are running through my mind. I don't know what's going to happen when I even open the door. I have no idea, and I don't even know why they're at my home. So I went, my husband was coming up the stairs. I could hear him coming up. Same thing, irritated, not knowing who's banging on our door. And then we both kind of realized, well, all right, I guess we better open the door. Right before we could open it, literally right before, the door was busted open. They used a battering ram to bust my door in. I maybe had a minute before they decided to go ahead and exercise force on my home. From there, we were standing right there. My husband was trying to calm them down. And one of them at one point grabbed my phone out of my hand. I had been trying to call our attorney because I just didn't know what to do. Who prepares for the FBI to show up at your door when you're a law-abiding citizen who's advocating for the Constitution? You're just doing the right thing, and you just can't believe that they would have any reason to be there. So they grabbed my phone and kind of pulled my arms around, handcuffed me, and made me stay outside. And my children were still inside. They weren't with me. And the officers and the FBI agents made their way into my home and just began going through it. My daughter was also, go ahead.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
My daughter was also there with us. I have 4 children. Only 3 were home that day. And my daughter, who's my oldest, came up from her room and was the same as us. What's the banging about? By the time she got up there to everything that was happening, she was just absolutely blown away and pretty scared. What is going on? Why are you here? Just a lot of chaos that was very unnecessary. They didn't have to come this way to my home, and it just progressed from there.
How early in the day was it that this happened?
Yeah, they arrived at 9:30, and we waited outside. I was handcuffed for about 30 minutes outside. In my neighborhood, we're a very tight community. All the kids play together. All the parents know each other. And they had blocked off my road, made a big, huge spectacle. And I remained outside while they did what they did. It's a really weird feeling to be standing out there knowing people are thinking what? Well, the FBI is reserved for violent criminals, for drug dealers, human traffickers, that sort of situation, not for suburban housewives.
You know, when they busted through the door, did they even show their badges? Did they provide any type of warrant or statement why they were busting down your front door and searching your home?
No, and that's a really great point that you're making. No, no badges were shown. No identification was shown. I repeatedly asked to see the warrant, which they told me they'd get it when they felt like it, when they decided to. And I repeatedly asked to see the warrant over and over and over. And it wasn't until they had finished going through my home to, quote, secure my home, that finally, maybe an hour into them being there or so, they finally decided. It was just a point of they were just being rude about it. They just didn't want to do it because I was asking. And finally, one of the FBI agents said, "Well, go ahead and go grab the warrant and show her." But no, they did not, and they probably never would have shown me had I not asked. They probably would have just left it on the table at the end of their raid on my home, which is not policy and procedure either. So
No.
there was just a lot of spitefulness in the way that they came to my home, the way that they delivered, and the way that they behaved towards me and my husband and my daughter. My daughter at one point was being pulled up and down the stairs by one of the agents by her hoodie. She's petite. She said she's 18 years old, just graduated from high school, absolutely freaking out and not sure what to do, and they're not helping. And you're wondering, well, were you asking why they were here? What were they doing? I was asking, why are you here? What are you doing here? Do you even know why you're here? And they had no answers for me. They just said they're doing their job. That's it.
They said they're doing a what? Say that again.
Yeah, they said, we're just doing our job.
Wow.
I mean, I've read that. You mentioned in your introduction, and because you do so much work on behalf of Jewish America and Jews around the world, I'm also very much a student of the Holocaust and of World War II and the things that led up to that, how we got to that position where we could murder, where regular men, regular police officers in the final solution really could put away their humanity and hurt children, women, to the point of death. And we're seeing a lot of that. We're seeing a lot of this calculated coldness when the government gives permission to the populace or to those who are in charge, right? Even the populace. And so these people are bad. You mentioned labeling parents as domestic terrorists by AG Garland. That's correct. He did say that, and he has tagged certain individuals in this country, all throughout this country. They now have a tag in the system, in the FBI database, with attached probably to my name. I'm pretty certain at this point, saying that I'm a potential domestic terrorist for being so involved in my local school board.
Yeah.
That's real. That's reality in America right now.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And, if we watch the tactics and how Hitler came to power, it didn't happen overnight. And ladies and gentlemen, you all have to understand that when I opened this segment to the Nazi Gestapo tactics, that's exactly what we are witnessing happening in the United States of America. And just like Sherronna said, we couldn't even imagine that our own law enforcement would turn on us, we the people. We share this country with them. Our children grow up in the same neighborhoods that their children do. And the fact that they would their only response is that we're just doing our job. We just went through 2 years of fighting against the racist, anti-Semitic Black Lives Matter group and Antifa that were killing police officers, attacking them in the streets. And Americans launched a campaign, a Blue Lives Matter campaign. We love our law enforcement, and we do. They keep us safe and our families safe in our homes. But ladies and gentlemen, what do we do when our own government uses that law enforcement against us. It's outrageous. It's absolutely unacceptable. Um, Tell us about your background, Sherronna. We know that, you're a homeschooling mother of four. There were three kids home that day. You're married. Tell us why you think you were targeted in this raid. What was it that the FBI felt that they had justified warrant to, and did you read the warrant? I mean, what did the warrant say?
Well, let me start with why I'm here, and just kind of give your audience a little backstory why they really do need to understand that if this can happen to me, it absolutely can happen to them, and I believe it already is. We know that on November 18th, a husband and wife in Texas were thrown in jail after attending a school board meeting because the school board simply didn't like the way that the couple spoke to them. They weren't violent, they weren't obstinate, they just didn't like what they said, and they were put in jail for the night. So their story is not getting out, and so I want your audience to understand I am very vocal. I'm very activated in Colorado policy. I have helped multiple campaigns of conservative candidates, including running the primary campaign for now Congresswoman Lauren Boebert. And I've just been an activated parent. I just got tired of it. I got tired of looking to elected officials to do the right thing and realizing they just got really comfortable being in the political elite class rather than representing our issues and our needs and speaking up on behalf of the people. And so I began to be very involved, reading legislation to parents, helping them understand what was coming down the pipe for their kids. And here locally, I've worked on several school board races, city council races. And in Colorado, you mentioned we had incredible success actually just this last time around. We flipped 9 school board districts in Colorado, which is amazing.
Fantastic. That
Yeah,
is amazing.
yep.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And that is a we effort, by the way. That there are so many amazing parents, grandparents, citizens across the state that worked on this and got this stuff done. We showed up. Like you said, it was a mandate to them. We don't want their policies anymore. And so for that reason, I've always been very, very transparent. We do lives every Thursday night on Facebook and invite everybody in the world to come out and listen to what's going on in Colorado. I'm very transparent. I've approached my law enforcement, my district attorney's office, the county commissioners. I'm very accessible, and I always make myself accessible. There were 4 warrants that were served that morning. 3 were served to Clerk Tina Peters of Mesa County and her 2 employees, and then the 4th one was reserved for me. I'm also very involved in election integrity. I believe that there was fraud. I believe that many elections were stolen, and I believe that we have serious fraud happening in Colorado based on evidence. And so I've been a very loud supporter for this clerk, Tina Peters of Mesa County, who is the first and only clerk I'm aware of that has the evidence in hand now, proving that Dominion was cleaning up their mess after the elections were over, literally deleting entire election logs in the clerks and recorders databases after the election. So she's an incredible hero to me. And so just to make sure your audience know who she is, I mean, she's a Gold Star mother, ran for clerk the year that that her child died. Her son passed away as a Navy SEAL. And she's just been such a servant, and she has been put through it. So I've been a part of that, supporting her, yet being an actual voice. And you remember the Biden administration has said that you also will be deemed a domestic terrorist if you dare to challenge the election. And so that's the second strike, I'm sure, election integrity, and then very much standing up against my school board. I became a homeschooling mother because of COVID policies. There was no way I was going to allow my children to be abused so that I could have convenience in my life. I love my kids. It's worth the inconvenience and the cost and the time, all of that. God gave them to us. They're our responsibility, and I'm not going to sacrifice them on that altar. I'm just not going to do it. So there are many parents like that here with me. I have one child that is still in the public school. He's a junior in high school, and he really wanted to finish out. So we've been so vocal. We have held massive rallies outside of our school administrative offices, parades. Like, it's been amazing here in rural Colorado. And for that reason, our superintendent decided to call the FBI.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, she did. She absolutely did, in partnership with the school board at that time. They did call the FBI. They said they felt threatened by all of these parents, and rightfully so, because they were abusing our children. But I don't believe any actual threats were actually ever leveled at them. They just didn't know what to do with all these parents saying, "We don't like what you're doing."
Now, was this before Merrick Garland's memo? Or was it after the National School Board Association put out their domestic terrorist statement?
It was after that. Yep, that's exact. They tapped into that. My local school board at that time and the superintendent reached out through NEA, and they took advantage of that and reported parents. We don't know which parents yet, but we know that they did report us to the FBI. And so, as I said, we know for certain now that tags were added to individuals. I believe, that the more vocal you are, I know that it does draw more attention. And I've already heard it from people. Well, why don't you just calm it down and sit down? And I'm like, and my comment to that is, first of all, I am guaranteed certain rights under the Constitution, and that first one says I can say what I want.
That's
And
right.
you cannot be thrown. You cannot have the FBI come and harass you because you speak up and you speak your mind. You mentioned that Antifa is still out there. Hunter Biden has still not been investigated. There are so many other things that are more important than this suburban housewife right here, and I would say rural housewife. But yet they've chosen to come and make an example of me. So there are many parents that are going to buckle down even harder now. They're going to double down, and I hope that they will. We never use these things that happen as opportunities to run away. We do not use these as opportunities to shrink back. No, you have to double down. You have to get louder and more vocal, because this is the testing moment. If
That's
they
right.
take they've taken our security from my family. Every inch of my home was photographed. They know where my children sleep at night. And we could allow fear to say, hey, let's just back off of this. Or we can really put our feet to the ground and say, no, I trust God. I know He led us here. Yes, I know He wants us to fight for our kids. I know He wants to fight for this amazing, we have so much freedom to live our lives, to choose what we want. I believe the second greatest gift God gave us after Jesus is our self-determination. And this government, this regime at hand, is bent on destroying that self-determination, and we just can't allow it, because I believe they're trying to set a precedent right now. And if they can get away with this, doing what they did to me, and wherever else they're going to try to take this, then they absolutely can do it to you, because the precedent will have been set.
That's exactly right. Ladies and gentlemen, you have heard the truth. Sherronna is hitting the nail on the head, and this is not a time to retreat. This is a time to buckle down. It is a time for us to get in place. We've got to educate more parents and citizens. And it is why at PJTN we have been educating Christians to stand, and Jews to stand with our Jewish brethren against the rise of global anti-Semitism, anti-Judeo-Christian values, because this is what they are targeting. They are targeting the people of the book. The United States, Sherronna, a friend of mine was on vacation, was traveling abroad, and she was in Morocco, and she was in a shop just shopping. And one of the clerks came up to her, who was Moroccan. She said to the woman, to this friend of mine, an American, noticeably American, and she said, "What is the matter with you people?" And my friend looked at her and said, "What are you talking about?" She said, "You're an American. What is wrong with you? What is the matter with your country?" And she said, she's engaged and she's involved in what we're doing at PJTN. But she said to me, it hit me like a ton of bricks. She said, we never think about how this is affecting and what message it's sending to the rest of the world, or what the rest of the world may be saying. But this woman said to her, don't you all realize that if you fall, the world collapses? We have been given a very special role. To whom much is given, Much is required. And we have been given this incredible experiment that was founded on the Judeo-Christian faith, on the Hebrew Bible. Our founders drafted our federal documents in the way that they did, mentioning faith, mentioning God, because of our DNA, our mission as an as a country, as our responsibility as a people. And what we allow to happen here in the United States will reverberate across the globe, and we are actually witnessing it. This is not the time for us to retreat. It is the time for us to stand firm and stand up in the face of evil. Justice, justice, thou must pursue. We are commanded by Almighty God to do this. And so, Sherronna, are you said you're involved with elections, and you're engaged in what's happening in your community, your civil government, local civil government. And this is really important to PJTN Watchmen, because our message has been to fight the battle on the local level. We have to take back local control of our school board, of our county commissioners, our city aldermen, our mayors, our state legislatures, because the state legislature is our only firewall against an encroaching, tyrannical government. And the people that are governing over our schools determine the future of our republic, or whether we will have one, based on what they adopt and they allow to be taught in the classrooms across this country. And so it is critically important that we are engaged and we are involved in what's happening. Sherronna, tell me a little bit more about what caused you to get involved like you did on this level. Was it your faith? Did something trigger this? Was it the elections? Because I find it interesting that you've got some important information with regards to election fraud, and that probably that information isn't getting out either. But tell us what caused you to get engaged on this level?
Well, I mean, every mother in this country right now, whether they're on the right or the left, if they've been a lukewarm Christian, I mean, people are getting fired up as they recognize that the system is being used to indoctrinate and sexualize and create victims out of our kids. And so for me, I got saved when I was 5 years old. I knew I was a sinner. I had 3 brothers. I hated them, and I knew it was wrong to hate, and I knew I needed Jesus. I did not know who he was at that time, but I knew I needed him. And I still very distinctly remember that experience. And ever since then, the Lord has been my shepherd.
Yes. Amen.
So
Amen.
for that reason, yes, when he entrusted me with my kids, there was just, I'm not afraid to be a fool for them. There's so many people that are clinging to what they think they have, and they're letting the most precious thing ever be tossed aside and seen as rubbish in comparison to the stuff, to the getting to go to New York if you'll just take a jab, you'll jab your children, and you're not thinking about the big picture of things. And I think God has given me clarity because I surrendered to him. I just, about 5 years ago, I just said, I know, and many of your listeners will appreciate this because I believe they probably have the same experience. I just had that fire in my gut that things were not going well. I am a small business owner, and I had seen the impact of policy on my business, on my local community, and now on my kids in their school. At that time, they were still in public school, and I just was like, I know I can do something about this. I'm not afraid to speak. I can talk. At the very least, I can start asking questions and start figuring out what's going on. And so that's really what happened. And then after the election of our governor here in Colorado, and the complacency of Christians around me, I could not stomach it.
Oh gosh.
I don't think that policy and Christianity are separate. People say, I don't want to get involved in politics. Well, politics might be seen as the gross stuff, right? The mudslinging and all that, the gossiping and all
Right.
that. But policy is going to get you every time. Policy just shut down millions of people's businesses. Policy
Right.
kept loved ones isolated in nursing homes, and these people died alone because of policy. So
Right.
policy hits us, and that's what we need to be concerned about. And God has not asked us to go hide in a cave. He said, go out into the world, go make fishers of men, go be a part of what's going on out there. And I know that you mentioned it already, but I know and I understand very well that if America falls, there's no other place to go to. We are the last bastion of hope here, and we can't allow it. I believe the Lord is going to hold us accountable. He has
Mm-hmm.
given us the opportunity to live in this great nation, not to, necessarily always be. I'm trying to think of the word where you're just entertaining yourself. Thank you. Not just to
Right.
entertain
Or
ourselves, but
to squander our freedom, the freedoms he gave us. Yeah.
and so when times are good times create weak men, right? And weak
Right.
men create bad times, but bad times create strong men.
That's
And
right.
so I'm actually very excited for this time in our history because we've needed a massive wake-up call. Many people thought, that the former President Trump was going to save the world. Well, that's not the way this is set up. The way this is set up is we, the people, have to secure our own
That's right.
constitutional republic. We were never supposed to feel a president this much. We were
Mm-hmm.
never supposed to feel a governor this much as we do. And so for those reasons, I think I just couldn't sit back anymore. I felt like the Lord was emboldening me. And
Mm-hmm.
I really did just get to a place where, because of personal experiences with my own children, that happened through the district, through the school's policies, that were legislative policies, mind you, not just local school policies.
Right.
I just thought this is evil, and I'm going to fight against it.
Good for you. Absolutely. That's so inspiring and so encouraging. And, I just want to tell our audience at PJTN, we are members of both the Jewish and Christian community, both members of faith, trusting in Almighty God that He does have a plan and a purpose for us, and that He did put us on the planet at this time. He put our souls within our physical bodies, and He uniquely created us with gifts and talents that we have to use for His glory and for such a time as this. Just as Esther was raised up to deliver her nation, and here we are, women, to deliver ours. And I cannot tell you how honored I am to have this time to meet you. Ladies and gentlemen, Sherronna, tell our audience how they can learn more about your organization, how they can get more involved.
Yes, absolutely. And thank you again for sharing us. I don't know what the future holds. I have no idea what's going to happen from here. But I do know that we just need to bond together and encourage one another because the tide is turning. And you can stay with us and keep following the journey at americasmom.net. And we also have great resources there. We have tools for parents to help with the mandates, to help with education requests, how to talk to your school board, things that are so intimidating when you've never done them before. So follow us there. We're also on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. And we constantly bring great people out to talk with you all. In fact, Laurie, I look forward to having you on and sharing you with my people because I think they would just absolutely love you. And this incredible work that you're doing, it's exactly what America needs. We've got to be a part of saving our country together. Not one person can do it. It's going to take all of us.
It's true. It's so true, Sherronna. Thank you. Thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, you've heard the facts. As PJTN Watchmen, we have a biblical mandate to warn our family, friends, and neighbors about this existential threat to our communities. How will God judge us for standing by as the world, even Christian leaders, accept the disinformation and indoctrination of our children in our local classrooms against these historic truths? We cannot remain silent. God warned the prophet Ezekiel about the responsibility of the watchman. As a watchman, you can sound the alarm and warn others by sharing this podcast with your family and friends. Dietrich Bonhoeffer reminded us, silence in the face of evil is itself evil. God will not hold us guiltless. Not to speak is to speak. Not to act is to act. In closing, don't forget to join us for next week's podcast as we continue this conversation about taking back local control of our community and our children's education. I want to also remind you that if you have not signed up to become a watchman, you can help support this effort for just $20 a month. PJTN is on the front lines and in the headlines, but we can't do it without your faithful prayers and financial support. I hope that you will prayerfully consider supporting our mission as we educate to activate Jews, Christians, and all people of conscience to stand on the front lines of this all-encompassing war. I want to leave you with a word of encouragement in Psalm 144, verse 1, where David said, "The Lord God, my rock, who trains my hands for battle and my fingers for war." God bless you, and thank you for all you do on behalf of our Jewish brethren, the State of Israel, and these United States. Thank you again for joining me on this edition of Proclaiming Justice. Please share this podcast with your family and friends. For more information about how you can get involved, please visit our website at pjtn.org. As a PJTN Watchman, you can help us keep up the fight to preserve our freedom for our children and their children for such a time as this.